In life, there are forces, unseen yet ever present. These forces, what some might call, in the complex and often hidden landscape of human existence, there exists a realm of unseen forces that influence our lives. These forces can manifest in various ways, sometimes as intuition, other times as a feeling of foreboding or dread. They can be both external, coming from the actions of others, and internal, lurking in the depths of our own thoughts. Yet the common thread among these forces is their ability to move undetected, like shadows in the night. Recognizing them requires more than just a passing awareness of what is immediately in front of us. It demands a deep, intentional awareness of the subtle vibrations around us. This heightened awareness, this keen sensitivity to the unseen, is the first key to identifying monitoring spirits in your life. Awareness in this context is not about being hyper-vigilant or paranoid. It is not about assuming that every unusual circumstance or fleeting thought is a threat or a sign of an otherworldly presence. Rather, it is about cultivating an openness to the possibility that not everything in life is as straightforward as it appears. Life is a blend of seen and unseen realities, and the spirit world is no different. It exists, whether or not we choose to acknowledge it, and it operates on a frequency that often lies just beyond the edge of our immediate perception. Therefore, cultivating a heightened awareness is the act of attuning ourselves to the vibrations, the whispers, and the subtle clues that point to the influence of these spirits. The first sign of this kind of awareness is an instinctive feeling that something is out of place, even when there is no obvious evidence to suggest anything is wrong. It's the sense that something feels off, like walking into a room and instantly sensing a shift in the atmosphere, an unspoken tension or unease that hangs in the air. In this way, the spirit world, it is the inexplicable heaviness you feel when you are in the presence of someone whose intentions are unclear, or the sudden shift in mood that leaves you confused and uncertain. Such moments demand attention, for they are often the first stirrings of awareness that something is lurking beyond the surface. Awareness in this sense also requires an openness to the unseen workings of the world. The problem is not that these spirits are inherently powerful, or that they possess a unique ability to control our lives, but that they often operate in the shadows of our own minds, subtly manipulating our thoughts, our desires, and our motivations. Many people go through life unaware of these subtle forces because they lack the skill to discern. It's easy to be caught up in the hustle and bustle of daily life, constantly reacting to the immediate demands of the world without stopping to consider the larger, more hidden forces at play. And yet, this very busyness is the perfect environment for these spirits to thrive. When we are distracted, when we fail to take a moment to breathe and reflect, we become vulnerable to the forces that seek to manipulate us from the shadows. To sharpen your awareness is to adopt a posture of discernment, a willingness to question and examine the underlying causes of the things you experience. If your thoughts are constantly filled with fear, doubt, or confusion, it is essential to ask yourself whether these thoughts are truly your own, or whether they have been planted by a foreign influence. Monitoring spirits thrive on the cultivation of negative emotions, and they often do so by subtly feeding your mind with destructive thoughts. But the power of discernment is that you can distinguish between your own genuine feelings and those that have been carefully inserted into your consciousness. With this awareness, you can begin to see through the veil of deception that seeks to cloud your judgment and perception. This type of awareness also requires a heightened sensitivity to the timing of events in your life. Often, when monitoring spirits are at work, they create patterns that are not immediately obvious. There may be a recurring theme in your life, an event that keeps happening, seemingly by coincidence, yet always at the most inconvenient or vulnerable time. This could be an ongoing series of financial setbacks, a string of failed relationships, or a series of opportunities that slip away just as you are about to seize them. To identify such forces, one must pay close attention to the timing, frequency, and nature of the events that unfold. When heightened awareness is fully developed, it also leads to an ability to sense when others are being used as agents of influence. Monitoring spirits often manifest through people in your life, sometimes without them even realizing it. This may be through friends, family, colleagues, or strangers who seem to have an uncanny understanding of your personal struggles and fears, yet offer advice or feedback that feels strangely invasive. These people might ask questions that probe too deeply into areas of your life you have not shared with them, or they might offer unsolicited guidance that feels more controlling than helpful. The heightened awareness you cultivate allows you to discern the subtle differences between genuine concern and an invasive agenda. These individuals may be unknowingly carrying out the will of these spirits, acting as vessels through which the influence of these forces is exerted. At its core, this awareness is a form of spiritual vigilance. It is the act of tuning your inner ear to the quiet whisper of your intuition, the gentle tug of your conscience, and the still small voice that speaks beyond the noise of the world. In a world that is constantly trying to fill your mind with distractions, it is essential to guard your inner space with diligence. This is not a matter of constantly seeking out threats or imagining forces where there are none. Rather, it is the ability to hold a quiet space within yourself, to observe your surroundings without immediately reacting, and to listen carefully to the messages that arise from within and without. When you cultivate this form of heightened awareness, you will begin to notice the subtle signs and shifts that indicate the presence of forces that would seek to control or monitor you. This is the first step in taking back your autonomy, in reclaiming the ability to live without the influence of unseen forces that do not have your best interest at heart. Being aware of the unseen does not mean living in constant fear or suspicion, but rather learning to recognize that there is more to the world than meets the eye. It is the understanding that you have the capacity to discern the truth, to recognize when something is not right, and to take action accordingly. This awareness is not just a passive state of being, it is an active practice, one that requires intentionality, sensitivity, and an openness to the possibility that the world around you is full of more than just what can be seen and touched. The experience of confusion and frustration often feels like an unshakable weight, a feeling that lingers no matter how hard we try to push through it. When you find yourself caught in a constant cycle of these emotions, it can feel as though you are standing in place, unable to make any meaningful progress. Your efforts, no matter how sincere or determined, seem futile. Doors that once appeared open now appear to be locked, and every step forward is followed by an immediate setback. This is not just the randomness of life. It can be the work of monitoring spirits that aim to keep you in a state of confusion, preventing you from moving forward and achieving the purpose for which you were created. The key to identifying this influence is to observe the persistent patterns of disruption that characterize these moments. When frustration becomes a constant companion, when it feels like every attempt at success is met with failure or obstacles that arise out of nowhere, you may be facing more than just an unfortunate streak of bad luck. This is often the work of monitoring spirits, which thrive on creating and maintaining confusion, clouding your ability to think clearly and make wise decisions. The goal of these spirits is not only to frustrate your efforts, but to disorient you completely, creating a fog that makes it hard to discern the next right step. The confusion is designed to disarm you, to get you lost in the maze of uncertainty, so that you can no longer see the path forward. At times, these spirits can work subtly, introducing just enough doubt or hesitation into your thoughts to cause indecision. One moment, you might be certain of the direction you want to take, feeling empowered and ready to act. The next, you find yourself second-guessing every move, wondering whether you've made the right choice. The cycle of doubt feeds into frustration, and as frustration mounts, clarity slips further away. This emotional and mental fog can cause even the most rational person to feel adrift, unsure of what to do or whom to trust. With monitoring spirits at work, This confusion is rarely random. It's a calculated strategy to keep you in a place of emotional imbalance, where your sense of direction is clouded and your ability to move forward is hindered. The frustration that accompanies this confusion is not just external. It eats away at your spirit, wearing down your motivation and energy. You begin to wonder why you keep trying if nothing seems to work out. Every effort, every plan, every strategy you implement seems to collapse, and in its place is a growing sense of futility. It is not unusual for people under the influence of these spirits to experience a complete lack of enthusiasm or interest in their goals, as the constant feeling of defeat drains them of their will to pursue what they once held dear. The frustration doesn't come from the simple fact of failure, but from the deep-seated feeling that something is out of alignment. Something unseen is interfering, and it's hard to identify or confront. One of the most troubling aspects of this confusion is the difficulty in breaking the cycle. The more you try to force your way through, the tighter the grip of frustration becomes. Each new setback only deepens the confusion, making it harder to recognize that the force at work is external and not just the result of your own mistakes or shortcomings. The patterns seem random, but the truth is that they are carefully orchestrated, intended to create a sense of helplessness that keeps you from being able to break free. In many ways, the confusion and frustration can act like a smokescreen, hiding the true cause of your struggles and leading you to believe that they are the natural result of your own inadequacies. The longer you remain unaware of this, the more difficult it becomes to break free from the cycle. But once you recognize the pattern, you will see that you are not alone in your struggle. You are under the influence of forces working to hinder your growth, to keep you from realizing your true potential. The frustration is not just mental or emotional. The sense of exhaustion is not just from the external circumstances, but from the ongoing internal battle, an unseen war that plays out in your thoughts, your heart, and your spirit. Ultimately, the confusion and frustration are intended to paralyze you, to prevent you from seeing things clearly, from making decisions with confidence, and from moving forward with purpose. Once you identify the root cause of this cycle and begin to acknowledge the unseen forces at play, you can take the first step toward breaking free from the hold they have on your life. There are few experiences more unsettling. Their actions might seem well-meaning on the surface, but as you dig deeper, you begin to sense that something about their involvement feels off, even manipulative. It is at this point that you may begin to realize that the presence of these individuals in your life is not coincidental. They may in fact be vessels through which monitoring spirits are acting, unknowingly or knowingly, to influence your life and keep you under surveillance. These vessels often come into your life under the guise of a friendly acquaintance, a family member, a colleague, or even a stranger. At first, their behavior may seem benign, perhaps even helpful. They may ask questions that feel intrusive, but are delivered in such a way that it's hard to pinpoint why it feels so invasive. They may offer unsolicited advice, make observations about your life that seem too personal for someone who hasn't been privy to your innermost thoughts, or simply display an unusual interest in areas that you prefer to keep private. One of the most effective tools these monitoring spirits use through individuals is subtlety. These spirits know that direct confrontation will only expose their presence, so they work covertly through others to gather information and exert influence. The individuals they use often don't even realize that they are being manipulated or guided by these spirits. These vessels may believe they are acting in your best interest, or that they are merely being helpful, but they are unknowingly allowing themselves to be used to track your movements, your thoughts, and your emotional state. They might show a disproportionate amount of interest in your private life, asking about things that seem inconsequential to others but are deeply personal to you. These questions, seemingly innocent, are often the first step in building a pattern of intrusion into your life. The problem with these kinds of relationships is that they often seem so normal at first. You may not immediately recognize the signs of manipulation or feel uncomfortable because the individuals involved act in a way that appears to be caring or interested. However, as time goes on, you begin to notice that their behavior becomes increasingly invasive. They ask questions that seem too personal for the level of intimacy in your relationship. They may suggest that you should make certain decisions that feel out of alignment with your true self. They seem to be more knowledgeable about your circumstances than they have any right to be, and the guidance they offer always seems to nudge you in directions that make you feel constrained or controlled. Their words may begin to have an odd sense of authority, as if they know exactly what's best for you, even though you never gave them the authority to dictate your path. These vessels may also use guilt as a means of exerting control. If you don't respond to their questions or requests in the way they expect, they may begin to push you further, making you feel as though you're being difficult. They may, for instance, criticize your decisions or suggest that you are doing something wrong, always making it seem as though their intentions are purely to help you improve or correct some mistake. Over time, this emotional pressure builds, and you begin to doubt your own judgment, second-guessing your instincts and decisions in ways that you hadn't before. Moreover, the presence of such individuals often leads to a growing sense of discomfort and confusion. Initially, you may feel that they are just being helpful or friendly, but as you begin to notice more and more signs of their invasive behavior, you feel increasingly uneasy. Their interest in your life grows more intense, and they start asking more personal questions, offering advice in areas where you never sought input. This type of monitoring can make you feel as if your boundaries are being violated, but because the intrusion is so subtle and masked as care or concern, it can be difficult to pinpoint exactly when your privacy begins to be encroached upon. What becomes more evident over time is that these individuals are not just offering advice or attempting to guide you in the way a friend or family member might. They are often acting as intermediaries for the monitoring spirits that seek to control or direct your life. These spirits use the guise of friendship, concern, or mentorship to gain access to your innermost thoughts, and the more you allow yourself to be drawn into their influence, the more you become entangled in a web of surveillance and control that diminishes your autonomy. As you begin to recognize the patterns of this influence, you may start to notice that certain individuals in your life exhibit behaviors that are consistently aligned with the subtle manipulations you are experiencing. Perhaps they know details about your life that you have not shared with. Perhaps their questions or comments seem strangely tailored to provoke certain responses from you, responses that leave you feeling more exposed or vulnerable than you intended. These vessels may seem to be constantly testing your emotional reactions, as though they are trying to gauge your weaknesses or predict how you will behave in specific situations. The awareness of these monitoring spirits working through individuals in your life is vital. Once you begin to identify them, you can start to regain control over your own space and your own decisions. Recognizing the subtle ways in which people are used to gather information or influence your choices is the first step in protecting yourself from further manipulation. It is important, however, not to react impulsively, but to observe with patience and discernment. Understand that the influence of monitoring spirits is often so subtle that it can take time to untangle yourself from the web they have spun around you. But once you identify the patterns and the players involved, you can begin to set boundaries, reclaim your personal autonomy, and sever the connection between yourself and the spirits that seek to control your life through others. The true power lies in your ability to see beyond the surface interactions, to discern the motives that lie beneath the words and actions of those around you. By becoming aware of the subtle presence of monitoring spirits in your life, you take the first step toward regaining your own peace of mind, your independence, and your clarity. There are moments in life when it feels as though the universe itself conspires to prevent your progress, to throw up roadblocks just when you are on the verge of something significant. You may have experienced it for days or even weeks, where everything seems to go wrong, where opportunities slip through your fingers, and the more effort you put in, the more setbacks you face. These setbacks are not, when they occur in recurring patterns, especially after moments of progress or clarity, they can be a sign that unseen forces are at work, specifically monitoring spirits that aim to keep you from achieving your full potential. The frustration of constant setbacks is not just in the disappointment of one failed attempt, but in the feeling of being stuck, of making no forward movement despite all of your efforts. Every time you make progress, it feels as though something comes to undermine it. You might get a promotion at work, only to have a personal issue arise that consumes your time and energy. Or you might begin a new project with enthusiasm, only to have obstacles emerge that derail your plans entirely. These setbacks often come in waves, hitting you when you least expect it, and they tend to disrupt your momentum just when you start to feel confident in the direction you're heading. It's as if something is watching your every move, waiting for you to take a step forward so it can knock you back again. The design of these setbacks is not to kill your spirit outright, but to wear you down slowly, eroding your confidence and determination. It is as though these forces want you to give up, to abandon the pursuit of your goals. By making the path feel impossible, the more setbacks you face, the more you start to question whether it's even worth continuing. You begin to doubt your abilities, your vision, and your purpose. This is precisely what monitoring spirits aim to achieve. Create a sense of futility, a feeling that your goals are unattainable, and that it's better to give up than to keep trying. The nature of these setbacks often feels personal, as though the universe itself is targeting your weaknesses. They often show up when you're most vulnerable, amplifying your self-doubt or insecurities. For example, you might struggle with issues of self-worth or fear of failure, and the setbacks may intensify these feelings, making them seem like these spiritual forces know how to exploit your fears and doubts, using setbacks to reinforce the idea that you are not good enough, that you don't deserve success, or that your dreams are unrealistic. Each setback, thus, feeds into a cycle of negative thinking that keeps you trapped in a state of inaction. What makes these setbacks particularly insidious is the way they can disguise themselves as mere happenstance or coincidence. These are not just random events, they are often orchestrated disruptions designed to confuse and destabilize your path. There is also a psychological toll that these setbacks take. When you start to encounter repeated difficulties, you may begin to lose faith not just in your circumstances, but in your ability to overcome them. This is precisely where the strength of these monitoring spirits lies. They work in the background, nudging you further into despair and discouragement, and slowly removing your hope until you feel paralyzed by your inability to make any lasting change. The setbacks cause you to retreat inward, to question whether you should even bother pursuing your goals any longer. However, this is also where the power of awareness can begin to shift the balance. Recognizing the pattern of setbacks for what they truly are, an external force meant to discourage and delay your success, gives you the strength to push through. The key is in your response. Instead of surrendering to despair, you can choose to see these setbacks for what they are, not a reflection of your worth or potential, but rather a deliberate attempt to keep you from achieving your destiny. Understanding this allows you to reframe your perspective, to see each setback not as a sign of failure, but as an opportunity to strengthen your resolve. You can begin to break free from the grip of these setbacks by refusing to accept them as final. Each time you face one, you have the power to decide whether you will let it define you or whether you will rise above it. The road may be difficult and the setbacks may be painful, but you are not alone in facing. Rather, they are obstacles designed to test your perseverance and determination, and overcoming them will only make you stronger.